We need to improve our health system. We need to be properly resourced, and properly funded, and to be properly consulted.
A First Nation in Manitoba calls for health care help.
It was like the apocalypse, as a lot of people would say. Like, it was really eerie.
As people return to Yellowknife, some evacuees remain. Good evening, I'm Leanne Sanders. Welcome to APTN National News. A First Nation in northern Manitoba is sounding the alarm on critical healthcare issues affecting their community. Daryl Stranger brings us this story.
At a press conference this week, the Pimicikamak Cree Nation in northern Manitoba said they are short on nurses and lack proper medical supplies and equipment within the community. The community is set to open a new health center next month, but are concerned they may not be able to properly run the center. They are also calling for a renal program to address the needs of many members who are diabetic and need dialysis.
We need to improve our health system. We need to be properly resourced, properly funded, and to be properly consulted. Because we are basically sick and tired of putting our people home in a box, because that's what it comes down to. So many unnecessary deaths that are happening there. They're preventable if we can treat them at home, if we can get to them early.
Indigenous Services Minister Patty Haidu commended the leaders for speaking out and had this to say about the situation.
There's an important conversation happening about health equity and access to health care across the country. And as ministers have been renegotiating the federal health transfers, or negotiating the federal health transfers, in fact, I've been at many of those conversations, as well as Indigenous partners in each of the provinces and territories, to talk about closing the gap to access and care. It's really twofold. It's how the work that we're doing on supporting First Nations to have healthier outcomes and lifestyles that include access to some of the things many Canadians take for granted, as well as making sure that our healthcare systems are meeting the needs of all people, no matter where you live in this country.
Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba's election period has officially started, and ahead of the October 3rd vote, the Manitoba Liberal Party has unveiled a new mental health plan that would cover psychotherapy under Medicare. Liberal candidates say underfunding for mental health in the province means many vulnerable people do not have access to the resources they need to better themselves. The new plan includes investing in training to boost the number of qualified therapists to address the shortage of psychologists. It will also fund a 24/7 referral line for addictions treatment and overdose prevention centers. John Gerard is running for the River Heights riding and is currently a licensed doctor.
We want to bring the best treatments in rapidly. Our goal with the addiction services is to be able to ensure that people can get access to help right away, and then we can steer them through the system quickly so that they are getting the treatment that they need.
In the Northwest Territories, as Yellowknife residents return home, wildfire evacuees from Fort Smith are still waiting because that area remains unsafe. The local state of emergency has now been extended to September 14th.
Please rest assured that all of the agencies involved, including the town of Fort Smith, together are using everything we can, including fire crews, heavy equipment, air tankers, helicopters, to contain this fire and get folks back in their homes as soon as possible.
The forecast for the Fort Smith area this weekend isn't cooperating either. Warm, dry weather and brisk winds could boost fire activity. As evacuation orders remain in some places, two friends from Hay River and Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, Both found themselves evacuated to the small community of Fort Resolution on Great Slave Lake. They joined our video journalist Carly Jogner.
Longtime friends Julie Beaver of Fort Smith and Faye Avagana of Hay River, originally from Inuvik, found themselves both evacuating to Fort Resolution, grateful to be out on the land rather than out of territory and in a city. Beaver describes the day they were told to evacuate Fort Smith, August 13th.
It was like the apocalypse, as a lot of people would say. Like, it was really eerie, and it was early evening, so it was interesting to look at the sky and see how dark it was and red, and then you look at your time, and it was like 4 in the afternoon.
Avigana said she's not new to experiencing natural disaster evacuations, including having gone through the May 2022 flash floods. She's learned she didn't want to choose a city hotel evacuation and to keep busy helping community.
Despite being displaced again for the 4th time, I am grateful that I'm here, because the third time that I was evacuated, I had gone to Yellowknife and was in a hotel room, and like I said, I was grateful that they covered our hotel, but it was what they said. It wasn't what was comfortable for me, right? Being out at Mission Island in Fort Resolution has been a blessing for me, because I am enjoying the cultural week that is going on there, and I pray a lot for the communities that are affected. I pray for protection from my family that's traveling through fires.
We are really connected to the land, and we spend a lot of time out at our cabin north of Fort Smith. And for me, being here, I've just really tried to think about, how to stay connected. Like, I've gone out picking spruce gum. My daughter and I, we made our way to the water today, to the Great Slave Lake, and offered prayers and tobacco.
Using Starlink to call because of telecommunication outages, they urge authorities to make evacuation announcements much sooner so that there is less panic, and that authorities take seriously going to elders and knowledge keepers on traditional burning practices going forward.
Well, growing up, my dad was a firefighter, and so I've heard a lot of stories about how, there's been fires throughout history, but they've never been allowed to get as big as these fires have been. I think these are the biggest in N.W.T's history, to take as many things with the fire, to take as many trees as it's taken. Driving through the burn, there's the trees that we cut down last year for our firewood. It's no longer is there thought into that now we will have to travel further to get the firewood to keep us warm in the winter in both places. So my dad burns wood in his house in Fort Smith, and we burn wood out at the cabin. It's a trek already by snow machine to go and get firewood. I don't know where we're going to go and get, or how long it's going to take for us to get the firewood. Mm-hmm. So it's those kinds of things. There has to be some kind of a balance, and how do we get that back? I believe it definitely belongs with bringing in the elders and talking about it. What's happening right now with the government is you have these young people who finish their masters and think that they know everything, and they're not willing to talk to the elders. That's the way we were raised, is the elders have the knowledge. They hold the knowledge, and it has to come back to that, or we're not going to have a place to live in anymore.
The mothers remain grateful for the Fort Resolution hospitality. Carly Schogner, APTN National News, Inuvik.
Two Conservative members of Parliament who represent ridings in Nova Scotia have sent a scathing letter to the Federal Minister of Fisheries and Oceans. Chris d'Entremont and Rick Perkins wrote a letter to the Minister of Fisheries, Diane Leboutillier, calling for immediate action to counter what they say is illegal lobster poaching in St. Mary's Bay. The MPs are calling for more enforcement from fisheries officers and RCMP and public disclosure of all the details of the Mi'kmaq food social ceremonial fishery. The letter says upwards of 50 boats pull in hundreds of thousands of pounds of lobster per day. The MPs say the commercial industry is left to defend itself against criminal activity, and as a result, they feel civil disobedience is imminent. d'Entremont and Perkins did not respond to APTN's interview requests. Coming up, our Truth and Politics panel takes on deaths in custody. Stay tuned. Welcome back. A disciplinary hearing got underway for a Hamilton police officer this week in connection with the violent arrest of an Indigenous man in May 2022. A warning, this video is disturbing. Patrick Tomchuk was arrested for car theft on May 26, 2022. A bystander recorded the arrest, which showed several Hamilton police officers beating him. Constable Brian Wren kicked Tomchuk in the head multiple times after he was already restrained. Wren pleaded guilty to assault in June of this year and was sentenced to 18 months probation. He is suspended with full pay from the force. Now he is facing one charge of discreditable conduct under the Police Services Act. The hearing was adjourned to October 20th, when Wren is expected to enter a plea. The criminal trial of Robert Jeffrey Morden is going on in Winnipeg this week and next. The prison guard has pleaded not guilty to criminal negligence causing death and failing to provide necessaries of life in connection with the death in custody of William Amo. Morden led the team who tried to subdue Amo, an inmate at the Headingley Provincial Jail outside of Winnipeg in February of 2021. The incident was recorded by body cameras and aired in court. Just a warning to our viewers, this video is graphic. Our Truth and Politics panelists, Nigan Sinclair and Carrie Benjo, are here now. Thanks for joining us, Carrie and Nigan. We'll start with you, Carrie. A video of the incident is disturbing. What does this say about the level of violence of guards when incidents like this happen?
It's really reminiscent of what happened with George Floyd. You know, the violence and everything. It was so triggering to watch, and it makes me so very sad as a mother to think that his mother had to view these last moments of his life. And I'm not surprised. Often when it's in situations where you have people in power and others who are helpless, such as the inmates, there is possibility and potential for people in power to exploit that power. I myself went to a residential school, and we knew which supervisors we had to avoid because they went a little too far sometimes. And we also had supervisors who were capable of handling hundreds of children. And I think there should be more stringent guidelines when selecting these people who are going to be in these positions of power, because it's so horrifying to see somebody die so tragically.
So Nigan, this is just one of many in-custody deaths. How does having video prove what prison advocates have been saying about treatment of inmates?
Well, this is precisely why lawyers, advocates, families all demand that there be supervision in these kinds of scenarios through video camera, because what ends up happening is a disproportionate set of violence. I mean, it is already a violent situation, but a disproportionate response often to that violence. And in this case, we see 15 different guards take it upon themselves to subdue, attack. And William Amu, who is in this video, says multiple times, "I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe." And a guard very callously says, "If you can speak, you can breathe." The fact is that he was under deep duress before even the guards subdued him. He was seen as suffering from a great deal of mental anguish and trauma. And allegedly, there was a racist joke that sparked this whole incident. And all of this stuff is what's caught on tape. So this is vital to be able to have an adequate and just justice system.
Carrie, the guard in this case was charged. How rare is that? And should there be another mechanism to deal with these events when they don't reach the threshold of criminal charges?
Absolutely. There needs to be an oversight committee. Like this happens in the case of police officers. It's very rarely that they are held accountable for some of the crimes that they commit. And guards at this situation, and yeah, they should be held accountable because they are not above the law. And there's this idea that if they're in control, they're the ones that are enforcing the rules, then the rules don't apply to them. And the system so far has allowed them to believe that they are untouchable. And until they are held accountable, I don't think there's going to be much change in the environment and the way these guards and police officers treat people that they're in charge of and perpetuating crimes against.
Nigan, William Amo's mother is suing Robert Morden, the guard accused of causing his death, and the province of Manitoba. What's your take on that?
Well, let's be clear. If there wasn't a video, absolutely Darlene Amu would not have had the evidence to be able to support the claims that she's making against the province, and the rightful claims that it was a disproportionate set of violence that was subdued and ultimately resulted in the death of her son. The alleged cause of death is cardiac arrest, and you don't simply just go into a heart attack just randomly. In this case, no drugs were found in William Amu's body. This was clearly a case of trauma, and without the video camera present, you would not have seen this come to light. You would probably not even see the amount of media attention, because inmates die all the time at the hands of guards, and it's called things like suicide or said like a violent altercation. When the paramedics showed up to assist William Amu, they were forced to wait for almost 15 minutes, told to just step aside and things will get ready. There was what they claimed to be, as according to the court records, no sense of urgency upon the arrival. So it's very clear that this was a callous act, and people need to be held accountable for this. This wasn't just simply some violent altercation in a prison.
Right. Nigan and Carrie, we have to leave it there, but we will, I guess, find out the fate of the person charged. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much.
We have to take a break, but when we're back, Robbie Robertson's legacy lives on in a cultural centre in Ontario. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. This photo was taken and sent in by Marie Barron. Marie captured this sunset near Calgary. Be sure to send us a photo this weekend to share at APTN.ca, and then tune in every day next week to see if your photo is our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. On the East Coast, a warm day tomorrow, Charlottetown 26, Fredericton 27. Nain 8 tomorrow, Happy Valley Goose Bay 9. In Quebec, Saguenay 21 and Montreal 22. Peterborough and Ottawa 23 tomorrow, along with Toronto. And in Northern Ontario, Timmins 19, Big Trout Lake 15. Over in Northern Manitoba, Churchill 11, Puckatawagan 16. Gimli and Winnipeg 22, Brandon 23. Southern Saskatchewan, North Battleford and Saskatoon, Yorkton and Estevan, all 21 tomorrow. Uranium City 18 and Stony Rapids 17. In Northern Alberta, Fort Chip and High Level 20. Southern Alberta, Calgary 21 and Edmonton 23. In Southern BC, another sunny and warm day, Kamloops 28, Penticton 27. Dease Lake 17 and Smithers 20. Up north, Old Crow 16 and Dawson 18. Northwest Territories, Fort Simpson 21 and Trout Lake 22. Further north, Inuvik 15 and Colville Lake 18. Cambridge Bay 7, Baker Lake 14, and Arctic Bay 3 and Iqaluit 8. A museum and educational centre in Southern Ontario has taken in more than $50,000 in donations in the past month. This after the family of iconic Canadian musician Robbie Robertson asked for donations be made to the Woodland Cultural Centre. Robertson, who was a member of the Six Nations of the Grand River, passed away in early August at the age of 80. The centre is located in Brantford on the site of the former Mohawk Institute Residential School. Funds raised will go toward the construction of a new building. Heather George is the executive director of the Woodland Cultural Centre. She says the outpouring of support has been tremendous since the Robertson family made its request.
Is having the support of Robbie's family, and then also just knowing that part of our role here is to support those emerging musicians and artists, and the way that community members have reached out to us is really uplifting. I think especially for our staff, it makes us feel like we're doing the thing that we're meant to do.
Thanks for joining us tonight. If you want to see these stories and more, head over to aptnnews.ca. Have a great evening.